much, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for joining me again. And special thanks, as always, to my little band of Patreon friends. If you'd like to join their number, it's up there. Please do. And so, it has been a busy week for the Donald. For my Donald. I love my wee Donald's up there. Make America again. I stroked out great, because it's never going to be great again. Anyway. So, having just finished opening his golf course in Scotland, a trip paid for from the US public purse, he flew home into more economic controversy. Now, Donald was irked by the head of the US Central Bank, a guy called Jerome Powell, who has steadfastly refused to bow to Donald's pressure to lower the US interest rates. Now, while Trump is the man who put Powell in his present position, he doesn't, at this time anyway, have the power to dismiss him. And his policy of imposing tariffs right, left and centre around the world is causing economic difficulties at home. So, the head of the central bank appears secure in his job. Well, for the moment, at least. Now, all the tariffs that Trump, of course, imposed this week, he could just forget about next week. Because the man is, shall we say, not right. As we say in these parts, that jail is not right. He's not right. God love him, but he's not right. Another US public servant who may not be so lucky, who also incensed Trump, well, he sacked her. A woman called Erica McIntyre, head of the Bureau of Labour Statistics, who had the temerity to report the stats as they were, indicating that the US job market was somewhat stagnating. Now, Trump, proving his demagogic instincts, he just sacked her. He sacked the messenger, saying that the statistics were false and they were stacked against him. I remember this about an election he had where he said somewhere similar. Now, many argue Trump's rolling out of the tariffs and sacking of the statistician are attempts by him to distract from the growing scandal of his friendship with pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Trump, during his electoral campaign this time, promised his electoral base that if he was elected, if they were good enough to put the wee X beside the Donald, then he would release all sorts of files. He'd release the JFK files, he'd release UFO files, but he was specifically asked, and he said yes, he would release files on the Jeffrey Epstein case. But he hasn't followed through on that promise, leading many to question, why would this be? The answer may be Trump's decades-long friendship, close friendship with Epstein. Now, eventually they did fall out, but not because of Epstein's convictions for pedophilia, but over a property deal where Epstein shafted Trump and got in ahead of him. And while Trump over the years has tried to put clear blue water between himself and Epstein, there is a mountain of evidence proving just how close the two had previously been. Watch this.
It's the moment Jeffrey Epstein is asked about his friendship with Donald Trump, and it's going viral today.
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
The year was 2010, and the financier was battling an onslaught of lawsuits from multiple women, accusing him of sexually abusing them as minors. Epstein and Trump were known to be good friends, and in the deposition, he was asked directly.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Epstein pauses, shakes his head, then answers.
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
The deposition has resurfaced as the backlash over the Epstein files continues to dog the president. Today, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche traveled to Tallahassee to speak with Epstein's ex-girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. She's serving 20 years for recruiting underage girls for Epstein. One thing Ghislaine Maxwell may be asked about is the birthday book, a book of raunchy letters from Epstein's friends she reportedly put together for his 50th birthday. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump wrote a letter with a doodle of a naked woman. He's calling the report a scam and is suing the newspaper.
The existence of the book is it's an absolute fact.
An attorney for Epstein's victims say the book is real and is currently in the possession of the Epstein estate.
It's going to go down in history so that the world can see this book, and they'll know who were Jeffrey Epstein's best friends at the time, what other pictures are in there.
So the Attorney General went to talk with Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, we do not know what Maxwell said during her 9-hour visit with the Attorney General, Todd Blanche, but within days of his visit, this happened.
We have to get to some breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein saga. We've just learned that Epstein's convicted associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, has been moved to a different prison. NBC's Ken Delanian is following this for us. Ken, what exactly do we know?
Good afternoon, Chris. Maxwell's attorney is confirming to us that the Federal Bureau of Prisons has transferred her from the minimum security facility where she was serving in Tallahassee to a federal prison camp in Bryant, Texas. And they are not saying why they did that. One way to look at this is that she's going to a slightly less restrictive facility from a minimum security prison to a prison camp, which is about half the size in Bryant, Texas. The differences are not large. And she already was, according to the Tallahassee Democrat, serving in what was called the honor dorm within that minimum security prison in Florida. So she had the most privileges. She had access to yoga and Pilates classes. She was living in a dorm-like setting. But it is notable that after speaking for 9 hours with the Deputy Attorney General under circumstances where her lawyers are suggesting she's providing information to the government, that they have now changed her circumstances within the federal prison system, and they are not saying why, again, to a slightly less restrictive facility in Texas, Chris.
Ken Delanian, thank you.
We can but surmise that whatever she said, it was enough to guarantee her a more relaxed prison regime. And while Trump denies he will pardon Maxwell, when asked about her conviction in 2020, this is what he said then.
Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and so a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is. I don't know the situation with Prince Andrew. Just don't know. Not aware of it.
No. I've said this before. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not going to feed into that bullshit. I'm not doing it. For instance, I do not believe that traveling in Epstein's jet or even visiting his private island is in of itself proof of knowledge and or involvement in his nefarious pedophilic activities. Like, for Epstein collected powerful friendships the way some men collect butterflies or stamps, such as past presidents of the US, such as Obama and Clinton were both on his jet, and business titans such as Microsoft's Bill Gates visited his island. But this does not prove that they were in any way involved. Pedophiles do not talk to everybody the way they would talk to their friends. Friends such as Prince Andrew, who was witnessed kissing young girls at Epstein's swimming pool on the island, and whose mommy had to bail him out of a court case costing tens of millions. Now, none of the aforementioned, the presidents or the business people, can be proved to have any knowledge of Epstein's crimes. So I don't believe all that bullshit. I don't believe that these connections proved anything. What I do believe, however, I believe that Epstein probably didn't commit suicide in one of the most secure prisons in the US, in a cell which previous occupants of that cell have testified allowed no opportunity to commit suicide, and where a minute of very crucial video evidence remains missing. So I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced that old Jeffrey done the decent thing. What I do know for certain is that Trump had a long and close friendship with Epstein, and that it is he who is holding out on releasing the papers around Epstein's crimes. In fact, you know what? The Epstein papers could very well go down as this generation's version of the Watergate tapes. And they may even lead to the impeachment, and dream on, removal of one of the most disruptive and disreputable presidents in US history. Wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that be good? That would be karma. That would be karma. I don't want to put a dent in your day, but as we all sit down to our evening dinner on this Sunday, the 3rd of August, whatever it is, 2025, millions of innocent Palestinians will be eating leaves from trees in their pathetic attempts to stay alive. The Israeli starvation of that population is now coming to a head as the compounding effects of months with no food leave thousands reduced to being walking dead. Even if Israel opened up the borders and let in humanitarian aid, it will still be too late to save thousands of the elderly, the sick, and children who've been left emaciated skeletons. Not that there's any indication, of course, that Israel or the IDF have any intention of ending their illegal and inhumane starvation of Gaza. It is a disgrace that it has taken 2 years and this man-made famine to awaken the world's media to the reality of the genocide being perpetrated by the IDF in Gaza. The truth, thankfully, is finally being reported on mainstream news channels, but this is much too little, much too late. For instance, the visit of U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to inspect the U.S.-Israeli Gaza Humanitarian Foundation food distribution site. It should be inhumanitarian, by the way. Foundation food distribution site was a PR exercise as the IDF continue to shoot starving Palestinians seeking food. These food distribution sites, they are nothing more than mousetraps. They hold out the potential of giving scraps of food and then slaughter hundreds of Palestinians as they go and try to retrieve it. The testimony of a U.S. Green Beret, Anthony Aguilar, who was on the ground and saw what was happening, hit home this week, especially when he talked about what happened to a little boy called Amir. This is what he had to say.
We were distributing from site number 2. And this young boy, maybe 7 to 6 years old, my son's age, walked up to myself and another contractor that was standing next to me. He kissed his hand, and then he kissed my hand. And that was meaningful. It touched us. This little boy in his hands was carrying half a bag of rice that he found on the ground, some lentils in a scrap bag with some rocks and dirt because he was picking it up from the ground. He had no shoes. He left with the rest of the crowd. When I first heard the machine gun open up, I didn't know what it was. So I ran up to the berm, took cover to look, and I see the bullets flickering off. And I was trying to find out what was going on. Was there an enemy? What was the threat? And there was no threat. It was just the IDF shooting to communicate with the crowd. And Palestinians were left dead on the ground, on the road. And Amir was amongst them.
He went on to call out the IDF for their war crimes, opening up on civilians from a machine gun on a tank.
I have witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces utilizing the main gun of the Merkava tank, which fires a 120 millimeter round. And they call that a warning shot. I call that a war crime. You don't fire on an unarmed population to communicate or control them. It's a violation of the Geneva Convention. So yes, I have witnessed it firsthand. We were not provided with a rules of engagement. We were not provided with a standard operating procedure. The practice that became was just modeled off of what the Israeli Defense Forces in the area would do. I have seen the coax machine gun on the tank fire at the feet, over the heads, and into the crowds. A machine gun is an area fire weapon. It doesn't shoot a precise spot, it shoots in an area. Never in my military career, 25 years of service in multiple combat locations around the world, have I seen anyone use a quote-unquote warning shot from a belt-fed machine gun.
Of course, the Israeli propaganda machine immediately went into overdrive, attacking the whistleblower. But due to the fact that Aguilar is both a decorated US soldier and has had experience around the world in combat zones, they have found it impossible to discredit him or his reports of what is actually happening on the ground.
Mr. Aguilar's claims to the BBC and others that he was an eyewitness to IDF actions are false. He did not leave the static distribution site during operations, and from there, he would not have had a line of sight to any IDF assets that were behind high berms protecting the sites.
When's the last time you were in a combat zone and understood line of sight and what to look at? I did it for 25 years. I don't tell you how to be a lawyer or how to peddle propaganda. I know what I'm talking about.
Mr. Aguilar was terminated from his contract with UG Solutions on June 13th, 2025 due to poor performance, volatile conflicts with staff, and erratic behavior.
Multiple times now they said they fired me, but not once have they generated a termination letter or a firing letter or a human resources letter that says I'm fired. I terminated my contract. Period. I am not anti-Israel. I'm not anti-Palestine. Never done anything like this in terms of going on the record with something. But what I saw and what I witnessed and what the world got a peek of, a day of reckoning is coming.
Hard to believe, but even the BBC World Service, whose reporting on Gaza I have been critical of, this week did a segment highlighting the targeting of Gazan children by the IDF. They discovered that of more than 160 cases of children shot in the war, they found that in 95 cases, the children had been shot in the chest or head, with 59 of those children killed by the IDF. Only 2 instances were found to have been the responsibility of Palestinians, one in celebratory gunfire, the other in a gang conflict. The woes of the BBC seem unending. Hot in the heels of the sacking of 2 presenters from Masterchef, we now have reports that another of its top shows, Strictly Come Dancing, is being investigated after allegations 2 of its stars have been using cocaine. Now, with this in the public arena, I'm wondering if coke will now be called dancing powder instead of Colombian marching powder. That's what they used to call it anyway. That's what I heard. I'm not sure. Anyway, the BBC, they haven't named the 2 dance stars under investigation. Though I am sure that wouldn't be too hard to spot if you look back at past shows. Just keep an eye out for the dancers doing triple spins while wiping their nose and chattering incessantly to their partners. I'm brilliant. You don't think I'm brilliant? I'm brilliant. I think I'm brilliant. Oh, I could dance all night. I could dance all night. Let's go get something to eat. What do you say? Let's go get something to eat. Aye. I'm very lucky. Because due to my age and the size of this nose, I have never taken cocaine. Can you imagine how many cocoa plants it would take to tickle a nib the size of this? Now, I admittedly have been occasionally in the company of others who most definitely, I would say, have consumed Central America's most lucrative export. And I have to be honest, I was not jealous. I was not jealous of them at all. For I know, I've read about how this thing happens, you know what I mean? How this thing tumbles on. You start up taking drink, right? And then you have a wee smoke of marijuana, right? Next thing you know, you're snorting cocaine and shooting up heroin before you finally hit rock bottom, which involves finding Jesus or Allah or Hare Krishna and bothering people in the centre of Belfast handing out wee tracts. A fate worse than death.
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.